Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is Beanie and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be continuing the all-time series and we are starting on the NL East, and we're going to start with the Phillies. And the Phillies are kind of an interesting team to do because they have really good flashbacks, but their live series cards are kind of underwhelming. I mean, they only have 5 cards that are over a bronze, so I figured that it would be a pretty tough team to put together a lineup. But it turned out that 2 of their aspects were pretty good, but then 1 ended up being really bad. But with that said, let's get into it. Okay, starting out with their starting pitchers, obviously their number 1 guy is going to be the 95 overall Cole Hamels card. This card, man, Cole Hamels, I don't know, it seems like he always threw harder than 52 velocity, and he actually does throw harder. His live series card does. I don't know if he gained velocity as he aged, but that just seems like kind of a weird thing that he has 52 velocity. But overall, a really good card. I would really like it if his K per 9 were a little higher, and he probably would play more like a high gold than a 95 overall diamond. But overall, pretty decent card to start out with, but I definitely like their next 2 a lot better. This Roy Oswalt card, I don't know what it is with them about like their top pitchers having low K per 9. It's kind of a weird thing. But this Roy Oswalt card has been, I've used him in my rotation several times this year. Really solid card, really good sinker, really good off-speed stuff. I'm a big fan of that card. And then you go and you have this Aaron Nola. Finally, you get a guy with some K per 9 and also another sinker baller, really good sinker. Really good curveball, one of the better curveballs in the game. Even though I'm not a big fan of the curveball, having one like that is pretty nice. I would like it if he had a cutter or a slider, though. That would make him a lot better. They don't have any other flashback starting pitchers aside from this J.A. Happ card. But they do have 2 decent live series pitchers in Jared Eichhoff and Vince Velasquez. So that's that rounds out the rotation pretty nicely. This Eichhoff, man, I wish that his hit and his K per 9 were a little bit better, but other than that, pretty decent. And then Vince Velasquez has pretty good stuff, good selection, really good K per 9, but his hit per 9 kind of lags behind. So the back end isn't great. And really, the top end isn't fantastic, but their number 2 and their number 3 are among the best that I've covered. I really like this 93 and this 92 Oswalt Nola. So overall, the rotation is, I would say it's solid. It's above average as far as comparing them to all the other rotations that I've covered. I would say that, they're average to above average. So I ended up giving them a score of a 6.9. Okay, now moving on to the bullpen. This is where things get a little bit dicey. It starts off good. The 87 Papelbon, I know a lot of people really like this Papelbon card. He throws fairly hard. He has a really good splitter, a decent slider to go along with it. He has solid per 9s for a gold card. Overall, this is a really good card to have at the back end of your bullpen. And then once their number 2 is Hector Neris. And Hector Neris, in my opinion, is one of those guys who I love to get in Battle Royale. He's kind of like that Papelbon. He kind of has similar stuff. And, I mean, his per 9s really aren't that far off either. But he's a fastball splitter slider guy. Throws about as hard as that Papelbon. It's really interesting how similar they are. I don't know if the Phillies kind of have a thing for pitchers like that. But for the most part, 2 very solid guys at the back end. But then it gets really, really dicey after that. Like some of the worst that I've covered. Their next best guy is the 71 overall Casey Fiend. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. You guys always dog me for my pronunciations all the time. But there are a lot of guys that play in the MLB, and I can't learn the pronunciations for all of them, but this guy is pretty bad. He doesn't have a changeup. He's a 4-seam slider curveball type of guy. His stuff isn't great. His per 9s are terrible. He does have good control, I guess, if that's something that you look for, but overall, this is not a guy that I would want to roll with late in the game. And then moving on down, it gets really, really bad after that. Your lefty specialist is going to be this Adam Morgan card and this Cesar Ramos card. I would probably go with Ramos over Morgan just because Morgan doesn't throw hard at all, and his per nines are terrible. So Morgan, I would try my best to put him in my back pocket and save him for like the most extreme circumstances. But this Ramos card isn't terrible. His stuff is pretty good. His selection is pretty good, but his per nines are pretty bad. He is a sinker baller, so maybe you can get away with it for a couple batters or something, but eventually he's going to get exposed too. And then the next guy is this Luis Garcia card, and he doesn't have great control, but whenever he's playing up, his per nines actually aren't that bad, and he has really good stuff. The only bad thing about this card is his pitch selection is pretty awful. He's just a four-seam slider, two-seam type of guy. And he's probably not going to be able to face lefties all that effectively. Really, the only guy outside of Neris and Papelbon that I would feel comfortable throwing against a lefty is this Ramos, and I would only be comfortable throwing him for like against one or two lefties, not many at all. So and then mercifully, we're going to end out the bullpen with I picked the 59 overall Colton Murray card just because he threw the hardest and he was the only guy who had 5 pitches. But his per nines are also really bad too. I mean, man, this bullpen, guys, was rough. Like, it was really bad. It's the worst bullpen that I've covered by far. I do like the back end of it. But you're really going to be taxing your starters because I would want my starters to go at least 7, almost basically every game, because outside of Neris and Papelbon, you really don't have anybody that's viable from really at all. Like, nobody. I mean, even their bronze is pretty terrible. So because of that, I couldn't give them like a 0 because they do have the Papelbon and the Neris, but I had to give them the lowest score that I've given any bullpen so far, and I ended up giving them a 0.8 out of 10. So yeah, just a really, really rough bullpen. Man, it was really bad, guys. Fortunately, with the lineup, it gets a lot better. Their infield is one of the best that I've covered so far. At catcher, they have the 94 overall Carlos Ruiz, one of the most underrated cards in the game. I don't know, we've tested catcher defense, and I don't really know how much it matters, but for what it's worth, he does have really good catcher defense, and he's a very solid hitter, good contact. Decent power for a catcher, really good vision. He is on the shorter side, so that might be a detraction for some of you. But for the most part, this is a really solid guy who I would be happy to have on my team. And then at first base, obviously, got to go with a 94 overall Ryan Howard. He's going to be your big power bat, going to be your 4-hole hitter. Just an absolute monster, will hit tons of home runs for you. Isn't going to play the best defense or anything like that, but very, very solid. And then it starts to get really good. You get the 99 overall Utley. Just an all-around player. He has decent speed. He's a great fielder. He has a lot of pop. His contact isn't too bad. Kind of a 5-tool guy. I'd like it if he were a little faster or he had better contact or something, but I feel comfortable calling him a 5-tool guy. I mean, all of the tools are above 70, so to me, that's kind of like the definition of a 5-tool guy, even though he might not be like Andre Dawson or Mike Trout or somebody like that. Overall, this is a great card, and second base is an extremely thin position, so it's really nice, and that adds a lot of value to their team that they do have that guy at second base. At third base, you get the Mike Schmidt card, a card that overall I'm pretty disappointed with in this game, just because I thought that with George Brett getting an OP card, with Chipper Jones getting an OP card. I mean, Mike Schmidt is arguably better than both of those guys, and he's one of the greatest third basemen of all time. And I just can't imagine that George Brett ever had a year or that Mike Schmidt never had a year where, he surpassed something that George Brett did to give George Brett a card that was, as far as playability goes, so much better than this one. But yeah, the big reason I don't like this card is just because he doesn't hit righties all that well. And I do know that Mike Schmidt had pretty heavy platoon splits over his career, but I don't know. I think he was probably better than this. And he's a monster versus lefties, an absolute monster. But against righties, he's just basically a power guy. He's not going to be great against righties at all, like as far as his average goes. He's going to be pretty tough to use. But on the plus side, he plays elite level defense. One of probably the top 3 best third basemen in the game as far as defense goes, maybe even top 2. The only guy off the top of my head that I can think of is better is the Brooks Robinson. So Mike Schmidt is going to be an excellent defender for you down there. And then at shortstop is really, I wouldn't even call it a hole, but it's the only place it's not OP on the infield. And for shortstop, I decided to go with the Cesar Hernandez, the 84 Cesar Hernandez. Thought about putting Odubel Herrera at shortstop because he does have a secondary there, but we're going to get back to him in a little bit. So we're going to put Cesar there. He's a switch hitter, which is valuable. He's a good contact hitter, decent speed, good fielder. So I feel pretty comfortable throwing him in the shortstop position. And then for the outfield definitely isn't as good as the infield, but it does have some interesting players. In left field, I decided to throw the Ben Revere just because he kind of has a noodle of an arm, but he still plays really good defense, and he is going to be your leadoff hitter. Great contact, fantastic speed, going to steal a ton of bases, some of the best speed in the game, and really an underrated card too because the only thing that this card doesn't have that is the arm strength. Otherwise, if he had like a 99 arm strength or something like that, he would be really comparable to the Ichiro of last year. So I really like this 81 overall Ben Revere card. And then in center, this is where I decided to use Odubel. I decided to use him as a pure center fielder. That's his natural position. And I went with the flashback just because he hits better. Then the live series has a little more pop. And I think he has like 1+ speed or something like that. But I feel pretty comfortable throwing him out there in center. He probably would need a platoon, but I think he could be very, very effective out there. And then in right field, it's pretty good, man. You get this 88 overall Jason Worth card, kind of like the Mike Schmidt, hits lefties really well, but against righties, he's more of just a power guy. His average isn't going to be that great. He's going to play okay defense for you out there, but he does have a really good arm, so he's probably going to throw some guys out at home plate. I felt more comfortable putting him in right field than putting Ben Revere in left field. And I feel like defensively this is going to be a good outfield, but offensively it's not going to be that great, but you do have a little bit of speed out there, so I don't know, it's a give and take, but overall pretty solid outfield, just not great. And then moving on to the bench, we have we're going to start out with this 86 overall Jorge Alfaro card that covers our backup catcher, and he's a really good backup catcher. He's not a great hitter, but he's okay. I feel like if they would have done Jorge Alfaro right, he would have had much better arm strength. Well, his arm strength is pretty good, but he has a cannon of an arm from the catcher spot, and he would have maybe a smidge more contact and a smidge more power. But overall, pretty decent card. Good guy to have as a backup catcher. So I really like that. And then you got to go with the Kenny Lofton right here. He's kind of like that Ben Revere, but he was in the later stages of his career, so he didn't have the same kind of speed. But that's okay. He's a great contact hitter, and he does have some speed, so you'll be able to be fairly effective on the base paths with him. Then you got to move over to the live series players for the rest of the bench. Aaron out there, kind of an underrated card, man. This guy can kind of rake for a bronze hitter, man. 74-69 versus righties, 62-72 versus lefties. Got some pop, plays decent defense, has some good speed. Really a good backup outfielder for a team like this. I really like him. Got to go with Maikel Franco for your backup, like third baseman and backup first baseman. Could maybe think about using this guy in a platoon with Ryan Howard, even though Ryan Howard is fine versus lefties. So I really don't see why you would. But it's nice to have this guy on the bench. Whenever he's playing up, he can hit both sides fairly effectively. So he's a pretty good guy to have on the bench. He's had kind of a disappointing season, but who knows? Maybe he'll bounce back. And then to finish it off, I had a big debate between guys like Freddie Galvis, because Freddie Galvis can play anywhere on the infield, Hyun-Soo Kim, because he has that great contact and like okay power versus righties, good vision, big PCI, can play first base along with that anywhere in the outfield. But I decided to go with Nick Williams because Nick Williams has a good amount of pop, decent contact versus righties. His defense isn't great, but he has some speed to go along with it. So a power speed guy I felt was pretty valuable on for that best spot in the bench. So I decided to go with him. It's not a great bench, and the lineup isn't like one of the best that I've covered, but when you put it all together, you start to see a picture of a team that it kind of like their rotation. The lineup is decent, it's good, it's above average, but it's not great. And there have been teams that are better than this lineup, and because of that, I ended up grading them out at a 6.3. And when you add all of that up together, the Phillies come out with a score of 14.0, which, because they're the first team in the NL East, that does give them the lead. It's going to be pretty tough to hold on to that because there are some really good teams in the NL East. But the Phillies get a 14.0. It's not the worst team that I've covered. In fact, I think there are two teams that have been worse. Whenever I was grading it out, I really thought that it might end up being the worst team just because their bullpen was so bad, but their starting pitchers and their lineup were good enough that it kind of buoyed them above those two other teams. I believe it was the Reds and the Padres. So yeah, guys, that is the all-time Phillies squad. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tomorrow we will be doing the all-time Mets, and boy, let me tell you, dude, they have some awesome pitching. It's going to be a fun team to do because I'm interested to see just how good the pitching is and how good I can make this lineup, because there really are some interesting pieces in this lineup that I would like to check out. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like, and if you enjoyed it, please sub and share this with a friend. I would really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm going to be streaming later on today. We're going to spend all these stubs that I've spent this time acquiring through Battle Royale, through that Battle Royale run where I got the Bryce Harper. We're going to be spending those. I know it looks like I have a lower amount because I've already bought a couple players that I think you guys are going to be excited about. But anyways, guys, I will see y'all later. Peace.